gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's the 5th of April, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And spring practice marches onward, Matt. And, I'm starting to get the feeling like, it's weird. Like, it's only 15 practices in the spring, and I guess now they're at number 11. I think number 11. And, which is not a lot of practices, but it seems like, the message, like we could keep delivering the same redundant message every day. Cam Ward's looking great. The receivers taking a step forward. Christopher Johnson is making moves at running back and doing some good things. He even stood out enough to where Clinton Portis, the great Clinton Portis, was at practice yesterday and talk to us a little bit about Christopher Johnson, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Azubi and I got to spend some time with Clinton Portis yesterday after practice, and he was out there with his two kids who are being recruited by Miami, one which received an offer yesterday after practice. So that was an exciting moment to see a former Cane of the level of Clinton Portis out there, and his kid getting the joy of being offered by the Miami Hurricanes. A very, very cool thing indeed to see. But, you go on and on. Markel Bell is doing better at offensive line. He's factoring into the equation in the competition with Samson Okinola and Matthew McCoy and Louis Cristobal for a spot in that offensive line. And that's going to be a fluid situation moving forward. And, so my point is that it's 11 practices. It seems like not a lot. Even 15 doesn't seem like a lot. But the guys that are doing well are pretty much the same guys doing well day after day after day. I mean, McConaughey will flash here or there. And Darius Hayes will flash here and there. No argument. But the guys that are really jumping off the practice field are the guys that are good enough, Matt, to jump off the practice field. And that's why I think we're starting to see the consistency now, practice after practice after practice. And then also in the conversations with Mario Cristobal after practice yesterday, where he expressed to us that he's very happy with the competition that's taking place on his team. And he feels like they are getting better. So all in all, just your thoughts on the consistency of what visually is coming out of practice and the message coming out of practice.
They're missing like 5-6 starters, right?
But one came back. Ruben Bain back at practice yesterday.
Yeah, not including him. Mark Fletcher, both Mebagoas, Nigel Kelly started the first game last year. Messidor, Damari Brown is back, I guess. Yeah. So, but anyway, they're still missing a bunch of pieces is the point. So really what we wanted to see this spring was some young guy stuff. We already know what the older guys can do. Like, I have no problem with starters missing spring rehab. And you already know what they can do. You already know Francisco Mamigo is going to be fine, as long as he gets back to health, which he will, he's going to be fine. So to me, what the spring always was about wasn't, this starter looks a lot better. Oh, the starter looks so much faster, whatever. Like, because, that's nice and everything. But what you really need to become a well-rounded team is guys that you didn't think maybe were going to progress. You weren't sure were going to progress, step up. So, I would say a lot of those, a lot from right off the top of my head, Elijah Arroyo looks like he's pretty much back. Elijah Lofton is a nice surprise. Jojo Trader is a nice surprise. Like, these guys are talented, but the transition from high school to college isn't that easy. You don't know until they're going against college cornerbacks that they're really good. Jojo Traders looked really good. Elijah Lofton looked really good. So that's 3 guys already on offense. Markel Bell, who's a new arrival, I think looks really, really good. So that's 4 on offense alone that are young guys. That's what you want. That's what you need.
Chris Johnson would be another.
Well, Chris Johnson's not going to be an every down back. Everyone's talking about, he's north-south one. Yeah, if you don't try to tackle him and he runs north-south without you touching him, he's going to go 100 miles an hour and look amazing. The problem is, and we won't know until he really stops thudding and tackle to the ground a little bit more, does he go down on first contact? Because that's the kind of thing you worry about with a guy like Chris Johnson. He weighs 180 pounds. Okay, so if he's getting holes to run through where he's not touched, yeah, he's like amazing. He looks like he's going to be the greatest running back of all time. But if you get an arm on him, not even a full body blow, just an arm on him, does he go down with an arm tackle? That's my concern. That's what we have to find out.
It won't be so easy to get arms on him because of his speed. But
that's true. That's fair. But
anyway, I agree with you. He's not going to be an every down back.
So that's why I'm not listing him as the guy who I think is like this. Oh, what a great jump up! He's always been really fast. I don't think he's proven anything beyond the fact that we already knew he was really fast. And the reason he's getting the opportunities this spring is because everyone else is hurt. Everyone else is just hurt. So anyway, that's four guys on offense that I would point to that have really, flashed to me, which is what you want again, because these aren't guys that you're relying on. It's guys that can provide really good depth, and if someone gets hurt, they can step in and be fine. On defense, the defensive line, shockingly to me, I thought the defensive line was the strength of the defense. Now it turns out it's linebacker, based on what I've seen, okay? Because Mago is going to be fine. Wesley Bissainthe has made a nice jump up, okay? He's a starter. He's looked really good. And then behind him, I really like what Cam Pruitt is doing as a true freshman. I know he's a true freshman, whatever. They started Shaq and Mike Pickney and Zach McLeod as true freshmen. Cam Pruitt, it's not unheard of, right? Cam Pruitt can play a lot as a true freshman behind those two other guys, and he could be a strong side linebacker against run-heavy schemes. And then I also really like what Popo Aguirre is doing. So that's two guys. Basically, they lost two guys that are depth, Corey Flagg and KJ Cloyd. And now they got two guys who I think are just as good, if not better. So I think linebacker, the question marks I had at linebacker have been answered. Defensive line, I was so high on the defensive ends and the defensive tackles for that matter going into the spring, because my thought was Ruben Bain will play inside, Akeem Messer will play inside. So even if the inside's all screwed up and Jared Harrison Hunt can't stay healthy because he's had injury problems until last year, even if CJ Clark isn't as good as he's supposed to be coming over from NC State, which he's not, unfortunately, even if these other transfers they took don't pan out, Thomas Gore last year and the extremely strong Marley, I go like this, the extremely strong Marley kid, which guess what? He's short and stout and he's not extremely fast. He's quick enough. He can hold his ground, but he's not going to get after the quarterback. Okay. He's just not, I'm sorry. So
you call him the Marley kid?
Marley Cook.
I know. Yeah, I know, but you called him the Marley. I thought you said the Marley kid.
Yeah, he's the Marley kid. He's a kid. He's like a big kid. Anyway, the Marley Giant, whatever. So defensive tackle, I wasn't concerned about, mainly because I thought Messidor and Bain would be helping out inside. Now you find out, based on what Messidor said, it sounds like Bain doesn't really want to play inside. Based on what Lance Guidry said, he's not going to use Bain much inside because Bain wants to be a defensive end. So whatever. And then you find out Messidor has not been able to come off his two torn ligaments in both his feet with the surgery and just participate because apparently he wears regular cleats and it's painful. So now he's waiting on these special cleats. I don't know what happens with that. I don't know if he looks the same as he did 2 years ago in those special cleats when he was in whatever all ACC, was he second team, whatever it was. I don't know if he'll be back to that or not. So that's also a question mark now. And now, with Bain, obviously at the end, he's going to be fine. He's going to be great. He's going to be really, really good. So you got one reliable defensive end, and now you're relying on a Marshall transfer, Elijah Alston, who's really just a pass rusher, not an every down defensive end, in my opinion, and the ACC top in an ACC top level program. Okay, just his skill set is pass rushing. That's what he's best at. That's what he was brought here for. So I don't know where else you go. They're bringing in Romello Height on a visit now. They may take, they want to take him, and the reason why is because they don't know either. Bring in another defensive end who's experienced. I mean, Romello's had a ton of injury problems. Miami fans remember him as a former commit who spurned Miami on signing day, no less. But you know what? All is forgiven. All is forgiven. Mario Cristobal wasn't the head coach when that happened, so whatever. But this is why you bring in a guy like Romello Height, who's never done a heck of a lot. He looks good in highlight film, but who doesn't when you just put together 10 or 20 of the best highlights of somebody's career who's been in college for 4 years. And, they just have to hope that this is pieced together somehow. So that was surprising to me now 3/4 of the way through spring practice that the defensive line is a question mark to me. I thought it was going to be one of the best defensive end situations maybe in the country. And I thought that the tackle situation with the pass rushing ends able to move inside would be fine. Now I'm not so sure. And then we knew the secondary was going to be a question mark, and it still is. They probably need to bring more portal help. The safeties don't look particularly good. I think they should, I was high on Michelle Powell moving to nickel from safety. He started at safety for Washington last year, played cornerback prior to that at Washington, but he just is not, he's been torched almost every rep. It's by Xavier Restrepo. I get it. But does that mean that, he's going to be able to cover everybody else in the ACC? I don't know. And I can't imagine. I can't, and his PFF coverage grades weren't particularly good either, by the way, last year. And I can't imagine that he won't be attacked by opposing offenses. Just having, reading the reports, not from us, but from everybody from the spring. I don't know what you do. And they need help at safety. Maybe you move him back to safety. I just don't think he's fast and quick enough to be a really successful nickel against little fast guys. I just don't. He's really physical, which is great. But Jaden Davis was a little quicker. And that's why Jaden Davis was able to play up at the line a little bit more successfully. So, I don't know where you go with that. The safety situation, I wasn't impressed by Jaden Harris so far. Markeith has been hit or miss to me, Markeith Williams. And then they brought in the Vanderbilt kid, Savion Riley, who, honestly, I haven't even noticed him. I don't know. Has he been in practice? I guess so. But
he has not stood out.
No, these guys.
I do agree with you on that.
The safeties, none of them have stood out. And so, to me, the biggest safety who stood out is Zaquan Patterson, but Lance Guidry told us he's not playing. He doesn't trust any safety who hasn't been in his system for a year and a half. Is what he told us.
He won't be ready for that type of response.
That's what he told us. So now now what do you do? What do you do with that? I mean, you got Darryl Porter back at corner. You got Damari Brown back at corner. I think both those guys are good enough. I really have been impressed. Jadeus Richard, by the way, that's a guy I'd point to as one of the other guys who stepped up, that we were talking about guys who have stepped up on offense. Jadeus certainly on defense, really impressive, other than the fact that he holds on every other rep. He has to learn that he doesn't need to do that because he's right with these guys. He's on their hip every single rep he takes. And then for some reason, he just grabs them every time the ball gets near. Once he stops doing that, he's going to be fine. He's a really, really physically talented corner. I think he's probably their best corner, honestly, just on his physical gifts. Just got to really clean up his technique and his mental problems with penalties. So I think corner might be better than I thought it was going to be. But again, safety's a disaster. Defensive line now I have question marks about. So I still think offense is going to be great with Cam Ward. And the defense is going to be, like I said on the show the other day, forget Cam Ward in the offense, man. This season rides on the defense. If this defense is just middle of the pack in the ACC, Miami's going to win 10 games. But they may not be. That might be a real problem for this team based on what I've seen and knowing how past teams look. Now, again, they're playing against each other. It's a little hard to tell. You never really know until you play a tough opponent. So this is just my perception, my very poor perception, horrible judgment calls as of right now.
All right. That's a lot to absorb. I confess I do agree with pretty much everything you said, which is a little unusual. I'm not quite sure how to manage that feeling I have right now in agreeing with you so much. But the one thing that stood out to me in the last 24 hours, and I'm going to try not to ruffle too many feathers here, but be a little bit out there, but the return of Ruben Bain to practice. And they held him out as pretty much a precautionary measure the last few weeks. I'm not going to get too into the details because there's nothing that Mario hates more. And I want to be nice to Mario this morning. But he was held out, just for a precautionary thing, had a few little things going on, nothing major or whatsoever. But I was bothered a little bit by him missing all of spring practice. And, he had a great year last year for, great freshman year, was freshman of the year on defense in the ACC, the whole thing acknowledged by everybody as a kid to watch. That's going to be a beast, all those things that we all agree on, no doubt about it. But the thing that I feel about Ruben Bain is that there is so much more left in the kitchen. There's so much more growth for him, so much more advancement for him as a football player. And I didn't like the concept of him missing the entire spring practice. So I'm glad he's now going to make five practices this spring, because, like I said, you can't grow without putting that time in on the practice field. And sometimes we have a tendency to get too comfortable with players, and Ruben Bain. Matt, when we're ranking the players on the team, for different stories and features we do, I think we've got him at number 2 right now behind Cam Ward.
I think we put them tied at number 1, believe it or not.
Tied at number 1, right? It's 1A, 1B, or 1-2. How you can do it however you want to do it. He's, anybody would identify Ruben Bain as one of the top 2 players on the team. But if you took Ruben Bain and took him to Athens, Georgia, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Ohio State, maybe even. I haven't studied all their rosters, so I'm just speaking generically here. Please don't try to poke holes by pointing at specifics on those rosters. I'm speaking generically. Okay, if you took Ruben Bain to the top programs theoretically in college football, I'm not sure he's number 1 or 2. Now, he's a good young freshman who probably wouldn't have played very much in year 1, quite honestly, and would be in developmental mode, but wouldn't be at the top of the food chain like he is here at Miami, most likely. Okay. So I understand he has so much room to grow. And I personally, as somebody who would like to see this program do well, I like it if there's not that feeling of complacency, even with a player of his stature who has the place on this particular team that he has, because this particular team won 7 games last year. This particular program needs to go way much higher than where it is. And Ruben Bain in his development, would be a big part of that. So, I'm very happy to see him return to practice, because I'm hoping that getting in these 5 practices this spring, Matt, will help make him become a better football player, as good as he may have been as a true freshman.
Well, let me ask you a question, since you mentioned if he was in the SEC. What would just a general SEC schedule? Miami's playing some of the top teams, some of the bottom teams. If Miami was in the SEC this coming season, what would your prediction be for their record? Don't delay it by pretending you're drinking water.
If they were playing an SEC schedule, you would probably be projecting 8 wins. 8 wins.
I would have said 7, but I'm a pessimist. That's the point. I think anybody who knows,
and right, because you would think that they physically would not be ready to hold up yet. And,
correct. So
it's funny. There was a parent. Let me throw this out real quick. There was a guy at practice. I don't know what he's doing in practice, quite honestly, but maybe he's got a kid being recruited. Maybe he might be a coach of some youth team locally or whatever. But and he watches this show, so that I'm talking about you, and I apologize profusely that I don't know exactly, where your standing is in terms of going to practice. But you made a great point, which is why I'm bringing it up. And his son plays at Ole Miss, is on the team at Ole Miss. And he made the comment to me that if Miami played Ole Miss, and he's been watching practice, he's been at several practices this spring. If Miami were playing Ole Miss, that Ole Miss would blow them out, that it wouldn't even be a contest, because they are just so physically better at the line of scrimmage, even with Miami's O-line being in a pretty good place, that they are just so much better physically than Miami right now. And he thinks that Ole Miss would destroy the Hurricanes. Now, is he right or wrong? I have no idea. His son plays on the team. Is he biased? Maybe. I don't know. But it aligns with what you're saying here, Matt. And it would be tougher if they physically had to last an entire football season in the SEC, especially the modern day SEC that's adding, Texas, Oklahoma. It's getting tougher and tougher. Everybody seems to think they can play in the SEC. I happen to be a believer that there's going to be some reverse movement out of the SEC. There might be some more movement going in. Maybe an FSU talks the SEC into taking them. I don't know. But I think you're going to see teams like Ole Miss and maybe an Auburn seriously consider whether they want to just be all about the money and take the money and not be about having a chance to compete for titles. I mean, how many SEC teams are going to make the playoffs? I mean, I agree. If there's a 12-team playoff, they're going to get 4 spots. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind about that. They're going to get 4 spots, but there's going to be team 5, 6, 7 that are going to say, geez, if we were in the Big 12 or the ACC, we could be contending to have a place in this playoff. We're better than some of these teams that are making the playoff. And so I'm not totally convinced there's not going to be some changes in the other direction that people aren't even thinking about. We could be very early in this game. I'm seeing a lot of different proposals that different people are trying to come up with. There seems to be growing agreement that the current system that's in college football is not going to sustain itself, that it's just not real good. And I don't disagree with that. I think these people are ruining college sports. I think the TV networks are ruining college sports. I think the schools that keep jumping conferences are ruining college sports. And there's just a lot of inequity right now in the game. And the majority of the teams that play college football have no chance to compete or do anything. They're just wasting their time. And that's terrible. I'm sorry. You can sit here and pump your chest if you're Georgia or Alabama, hopefully again, one day soon, Miami, and you're at the top of the food chain. But, how about all the people and all the players and all the kids and everything else at all these other schools around the country that really have no chance to compete for absolutely anything year after year after year? And it's always been kind of like that. You've had the haves and have-nots, but you've had teams that were able to jump up and be good in given years. Look at Texas A&M. They're up and down, but they can jump up and be good. There's others out there. I'm not going to go through them all, but obviously in Oregon, Washington, there's Michigan last year. Teams could jump up and be good, even if they're not doing it year after year after year. But there's going to be less and less of that as this continues, in my opinion. And I don't think it's good. I don't think it's sustainable. And I do think there will be more reform down the road. But that just let me bring that full circle back to what we were talking about, where if Miami were in the SEC and had to play that level of competition that's at the top half of the SEC, let's say, every single week, they would not win as many games. They might not hold up physically. A Reuben Bain, who's a little bit of an undersized defensive end, might not be as effective week after week after week. So I like that he's back at practice. I think there's a lot left in terms of upside for him. And I thought that was a positive development. I hope I answered your question.
I don't know.
Which was, how many games do I think they would win if they were in the SEC?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you won't say who your Ole Miss friend is. I mean, just say Eli Manning's name.
I don't know. I don't know who he is, Matt.
You don't know who Eli Manning? You never heard of Eli Manning? All right. Anyway, no. I was going to make it
met him for the first time out at practice the other morning, and we were talking for a good 15, 20 minutes, and he was explaining to me how his son plays for Ole Miss, and he was giving a lot of thoughts on a lot of different subjects, and I was listening to him because he sounded like he knew what the hell he was talking about and wasn't just talking nonsense. I mean, he knew what he's talking about. And I'm sure he's watching this morning, and I can't tell you how much I appreciated our conversation, because it was nice to get your input. You clearly did know what you're talking about. But so I don't know. I hope I answered your question on how many games I think they would win. I don't think they would win as many with an SEC schedule as they might win with an ACC schedule. Certainly the one that's coming up this season.
Well, it's nice he talked to you for 15 or 20 minutes. Are you sure you weren't just talking at him for 15 or 20 minutes? It seems like that's what you enjoy doing.
I was listening, Matt. I listen. Okay. I soak in knowledge when I see it.
I don't need my son to go to Ole Miss to know that the better SEC teams would beat Miami fairly handily. I was talking about it with some other guys at practices, and so you look at the Miami team, right? Because we've seen championship teams at Miami. We've seen championship teams around the country, obviously. And you can tell looking at them, like, they look really big. They look really fit. They look really strong. And when you put that all together with guys that know what they're doing and play as a team, like, that's a championship team, right? And Miami is getting to the point where they're playing together. They seem to be getting a good chemistry together. There's a lot more energy in practices than I can remember, which is fantastic. You remember we used to say it was a library. That's no longer the case. So it's trending in the right direction that way. But when you just look at the team, when they're all together on offense or defense, you look at the individual units, you're not like, wow. You know, a lot of these other teams, you look at them, you go, wow, right?
The offensive line, I think, is getting there, Matt. I think the offensive line is getting there.
Yeah, that's probably the closest one. But when you look at, you know, it's almost like Bethune comes to Hard Rock, or some of these teams, you know, that come to Hard Rock Stadium. You look at them, they look like they're like high school players. You know, like it was IMG. IMG looks bigger than this team looks. And compared to some of these other programs that have been doing this at a really, really high level for a while now, if you put Miami against those players, you know, against those teams, you would notice, like, if they stand one team here just all in, you know, all dressed in whatever color, and one team here dressed in whatever color and the same color, and you say which team's bigger, like, it's just obvious. You know, it's like looking at the Empire State Building versus looking at, you know, my house. Okay, maybe not that big a discrepancy, but my house is 82 stories tall. No, it's not. But you get the idea. So yes, you're right. If it's a physical battle, then Miami's going to lose that every time right now. And it used to be Miami had the speed edge. You didn't have to be the biggest team if you were the fastest team, but everyone's already figured that out. Everyone's already caught up to that. And there really hasn't been, you know, people have tried to do schematic answers with different systems here and systems there. But as college football stands right now, you know, everyone can do an air raid. Everyone can do this sort of offense. Everyone can do that sort of defense. Everybody's seen it all. The next wave of whatever it's going to be hasn't been discovered yet. There will be something else, some innovation on defense, some innovation on offense that gives other programs fits for a while before everyone copies it. Like, that's just the way it's a copycat league. And Miami was at the forefront of that when they were winning championships, right? And the answer they had is, we're recruiting speed. We're recruiting speed, and keeping everyone home in the backyard, because that's where the speed was. And it worked fantastically for a while. But now everyone's recruiting in Miami's backyard. Everyone's got speed. The speed and size combination, everyone's running the same systems. Miami's not running anything different on offense or defense than anybody else, really. I know Lance Guidry does have some schemes that are unusual, but that's just confusing people pre-snap. Once the ball snapped, he's running the same damn defense as everybody else. It's just a defensive end is dropping to what a strong side linebacker would do, or weak side linebacker would do, and the linebacker's blitzing. You know, he's just moving some pieces. But at the end of the day, if you look at what's happening, he's just running a 4-2-5. You know, he's just disguising it really well. So until that next wave hits, and you got to hope some coach at Miami is the one that does it. But until the next wave hits, you have to be bigger, faster, and stronger than the other team. And Miami's not yet. But in the ACC, Miami is, right? The only team that I would say is bigger, faster, and stronger than Miami right now is probably Florida State. Maybe, you know, I don't even think Louisville is. So there's no reason Miami can't win the vast, vast majority of its games this year. And so that's why I want to ask you about the SEC, because I want to give people a picture of, yeah, Miami should win 10 or 11 games this year in the ACC against a really bad non-conference schedule. But if they were trying to compete for a national title, they're just not there yet, which is why I keep saying, you know, next year playoffs, the year after that, competing for a national title, because it's not like all of a sudden you get there. That's generally not how it happens. Now, it can if you spend a fortune in the free agent market, but they're not doing that. So that's not going to be the case this year. So, you know, if I'm a Miami fan, what I'd be recommending to you is root for 9+ wins, maybe an ACC title, but don't expect anything beyond that. Probably, if you're lucky enough to make the playoffs, expect a first-round loss, and probably not a very pretty first-round loss. You know, if you're playing one,
you don't even know who they'd be playing.
If you're playing I said if you're playing one of the better teams, one of the top 4 or 5 teams, which they probably would be, right? Because you know. They're not beating anybody good. Like, who can Miami beat this year that's going to wow the national, you know, the guys who do the AP pollsters?
In 2017, they were number 2 in the country, Matt, in a similar situation, right? They had beaten, I guess, Notre Dame. They had beaten Notre Dame, which was big. But I mean,
so they're going to have to win all their games by wide margins to impress national people this year, because the ACC it's just not. The ACC is just not going to be very well respected. It's just not. You know, whether the ACC is actually good or not is irrelevant, because the perception is the ACC teams that Miami's playing this year all suck. You know, they're not playing Clemson. You know, they're playing Syracuse and basically Syracuse and I guess probably Louisville and FSU. Those are the toughest ACC teams they face on paper right now. And that's, I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, it's like the old Big East. But in the old Big East, they would play really good non-conference games. This year, they're not playing anybody with a winning
program. They scheduled Florida. It's not their
Right.
fault.
And no major programs with winning records are on the non-conference schedule. That's just a fact.
It's not their fault. Florida stinks. I mean, next year, I guess they have Florida and Notre Dame. So
yeah, next year's going to be tough, man. Next year's going to be tough because they're going to have NC State, Clemson probably, and those 2 games. It's going to be tough next year. And Florida State. I mean, they're going to have 5 out of their 12 games. They're going to be very difficult games. Yeah, basically half their games next year are going to be, even if Miami's really, really good, they're still going to be 50-50 games. I mean,
yeah.
That's what it is.
All right. So we also had a chance to spend some time with Ray Joseph, which, what an impressive guy. I know it was frustrating for Ray last year. He came into college expecting to make a big splash and just physically wasn't able to do it. He's a smaller receiver and he just didn't have the strength to work open and beat people consistently. And the coaches didn't feel like they could put him out there and count on him. Well, now he's added 15 pounds or more of muscle. And you can notice that, Matt, he looks better on the practice field. His routes are sharper. He just looks like a stronger athlete. That said, he's still little. I mean, how much do you think Ray Joseph can contribute this year?
I don't want people hating on me, but I'm just going to tell you what I've already talked to other reporters about and what I believe. I think he's slower this year. I do. I think, and he didn't, by the way, he didn't say I gained weight and got faster in our interview yesterday. He just said I've gained weight, 15 pounds of muscle, 20 pounds of muscle, right? And he said he did it for longevity. He didn't say, he feels quicker, faster. He didn't say any of that because you know what? He doesn't look quicker or faster. Like when he does one-on-ones, like last year, he was like a jitterbug, like a Roscoe Parrish. And now he's just more like a standard receiver. He doesn't have that quick twitch. And he's still fast, don't get me wrong. But he's not that super freaky cartoon guy. He looks a lot more Brashard Smith-like, but honestly, a little slower version of Brashard Smith right now, running the routes that I see him run. So, I don't want to lie to people. That's just what I see. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just my eyes are getting old. It's just what I see. Yeah. Not that he can't help the team, by the way. He's going to be basically in Brashard Smith's role as the backup receiver in the slot to Xavier. I mean, he should get 300-400 receiving yards just doing that. He'll be doing returns also. Because remember last year, I don't know that they had a choice, by the way, because last year, a couple of those hits he took, he went flying, like it was a vendor throwing peanuts at somebody in the stands. So he needed to gain the weight. He didn't have a choice. But when you pack on 15, 20 pounds in 3 months, to expect that player to be faster or even as fast when you're that fast in that particular build, it might be asking a little much.
Well, I'll say this. The young receivers on this team are looking very good. They're practicing very well in spring practice. That said, and you can talk about Robbie Washington. He's looked okay at times. JoJo Trader looks great. Nikar looks great for true freshmen. They're doing a very good job. All of that said, okay, when the transfer portal opens in a couple of weeks, Miami's going to be looking for 1 to 2 alpha wide receivers. Okay. And it's a good idea. They need to do that. You have a quarterback. I think I talked about this the other day, so I won't go on too much, but you have a quarterback that might be an NFL quarterback and you can't waste it. Okay. You have a responsibility to surround him with the best that you possibly can. And that is why Miami will be looking at the top level of receivers that are in the transfer portal. And if they're good enough, they are going to be very aggressive in going after those guys. And it's not a knock on the young guys. They're just not at that level yet. And, even as good as Restrepo is and Jacoby George, Miami needs more than that. They really do. And they are going to be out looking for it. And then, the Isaiah Hortons of the world, JoJo Trader, Ray Joseph, they'll get a chance to contribute. But Miami's going to be shopping hard for some alpha dudes at wide receiver, and nobody should take it personally. They have a responsibility to the program, to the fan base, to everybody else. We have a generational quarterback here who's taking us back to the days where we had this level of play at that position, and we are going to try to be the most dynamic offense we can be, and that's going to involve just getting some more older, seasoned, stronger, faster wide receivers. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, so spring practice continues. They're going to have a very extensive scrimmage on Saturday. We will bring you as much as we can of what goes on out there through the weekend, and it all build up to what's going to be a very interesting spring game coming up a week from Saturday. And I think it's going to be interesting more based on who's on the sidelines than what's going on the field, because you know that they're not going to show very much in that game. It's going to be very vanilla because it's televised, and they know that Florida and everybody else is going to be looking at it. So, but I think there's going to be a ton of recruits out there, and the whole reason they're moving this thing to campus is so they can focus on recruiting. And it's going to be, the game's at 4. That's just going to be the highlight of the day. There's going to be recruiting taking place on campus from early morning, late into the night. And that's going to be the focus. And so we look forward to giving you guys a lot of coverage on that next week. But there was a lot of recruiting going on in the last day or so and continuing this week. And that brings me to what I alluded to earlier in the show, Mr. Clinton Portis, who was on campus yesterday with his 2 young sons who are hoping to be Miami Hurricanes, and one of which is good enough right now to play, not to play, but to earn an offer from Miami, which he did yesterday. His son Camden was offered by Mario Cristobal, and Azubi and I had a chance to spend some time with Clinton and talk about a lot of different things, and that story is on the website. But Matt, it's always nice. It hasn't always worked out as well as everybody would like, but it's nice to see the legacy guys be able to come back to campus with their kids and have their kids be recruited. And hopefully one of these days it'll work out, again in the right way. But it's still nice to see like a Clinton Portis out there with his kids.
Yeah, it's as nice as watching Mike Tyson fight again. It's just wonderful. No, it's a lot better than watching Mike Tyson try to fight again.
Have you seen those videos?
Yeah, some dude twice, and the dude's like throwing up or something. What is that?
Oh my God! How about the trainer he has that puts that body armor on for the workouts, and he's like pounding the guy into oblivion? I'm like, man, that still has to hurt. Mike Tyson still packs quite a punch at his old age.
Yeah, well, Clinton Portis was always a great Miami Hurricane, and I always loved those days because those were guys that just didn't care, because sports information directors, they'll tell players, here's what you say, here's what you don't say. They want to keep it vanilla. Clinton Portis got up there before the FSU game one year, and he's like, ask me how many yards I'm going to rush for. And we're like, how many yards are you going to rush for? And he goes, over 200. And, I mean, can you imagine someone doing that? Now they'd probably be kicked off the team or suspended or something,
Those guys, if they have an alpha mindset. I was joking with Clinton yesterday. I remembered walking out of the Orange Bowl with him after the last game of the year, and we were just talking. I'm like, so Clinton, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna go pro early? And he's like, I don't see anybody out there better than me. He's like, so I absolutely am gonna go out and go do it. And they just have that type of confidence. And now of course he's got these 2 kids that are trying to follow in his footsteps, and they're big footsteps. It's like, it's not easy for these legacy kids.
I wouldn't, if I was a Portis, I would not go to Miami unless you're great, And the other thing with Miami, we've just had so many disappointments with these legacies. I mean, even Anthony Chicola, who maybe was the best of the bunch that I can at least recall off the top of my head. He was, out of position. He was the wrong weight. He really didn't ever blossom to what he was supposed to be. And then you have all these other guys that had, parents. Well, I guess Ruben Bain is not. It's all in the family for Ruben Bain, obviously, and he's great. But the ones whose actual parents played at Miami and were really good, it just seems like when Miami takes their children, they haven't really panned out. It's not easy for any child to grow up in that shadow, and then to go to the same college, it's even more difficult, in my opinion. It's just a lot of pressure on these young men.
Yeah. All right, so that's just one of many recruiting stories we have on the site right now. We will be continuing to bring you more and more today and as the day goes forward. And then, of course, over the weekend, we are expecting a huge contingent of recruits on campus on Saturday. We will have coverage maxed out on that on Saturday and Sunday, and a lot of just exciting stuff going on in the recruiting arena right now. They're doing a great job of getting kids 2025 and 2026. I'm very impressed with the 2026 recruiting I see going on. They seem like they're way ahead of the game now. Now that Mario has his foot in the ground at Miami, and they've been able to build and build and build. They seem to be off to a really good start 2025 and a really, really good head start on 2026. All good to see. We will continue bringing you coverage of that here every day moving forward. So that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us and letting us catch you up on what's going on. If you like this show, like this channel, and you are on YouTube right now, hit your like and subscribe buttons. It does help us with the algorithms at YouTube in growing our audience. And if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please, please, please head on over to our website. Your subscriptions do multiple things. One, they allow us to do what we do every day, and that is to try to do everything that we can do to enhance your fan experience. So your subscriptions are really, really important to us. They're very much appreciated. Please, 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 if you're not yet a subscriber, head on over to CaneSport.com and join our great community of fans that live on the site every single day. And, it's funny. Most people that are subscribers, Matt, they do literally spend a lot of time on the site. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, people are coming to CaneSport.com to get their Miami Hurricanes fix. We greatly appreciate all of you, and we would love to continue to grow. So if you're not yet a subscriber, please head on over to the website. We always have an introductory special going on. Take advantage of it and come join our community of fans. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you next time.